Last month, Wyze announced 3 brand new cameras, the Wyze Cam OG, the Cam OG Telephoto, and the Cam Pan V3. And while the Cam OG is basically a return to the basics, this is also the most affordable camera in Wyze's lineup, the Cam Pan V3 has quite a few upgrades, so let's dive in and take a look at the whole lineup. Hey everyone, I'm Jordan with 9 to 5 Toys. In the past, I've used quite a few of Wyze's cameras. I have a Cam V3 right now that kind of overlooks my front yard, but it's set in my garage window, and so it's not close to the door. So one thing I was really excited about to test out with these was the Cam OG Telephoto with that 3x zoom, how close I could get to my front door, so I get a little bit more detail about what's going on there. So for a lot of my testing, I had the OG and the OG Telephoto all stacked on top of the Cam V3, so we get a direct comparison in different scenarios as to what the conditions were like and how the video looked. So even after having these cameras in my hands, the OG and the OG Telephoto, I was a little confused as to what the differences are between these that come in. The OG comes in at $20 and the Cam V3 is still priced at like $34, I believe, on Wyze's website. And even with them in my hands, I was curious what the differences are. But Wyze has a nice little comparison chart on their website that tells you a lot of those differences. And the Cam OG it's a well-rounded camera. It has a spotlight built into it. It still has the color night vision mode, but maybe everything is not quite as nice or high quality or high performance as what the Cam V3 is. Now these are all still like budget, home surveillance cameras. This is $20 for this camera, which is pretty ridiculous. Once again, these prices are from Wyze's website plus shipping. I think for shipping the OG to my house, it was like $4 or $5. So something to keep in mind there. But a couple of notable upgrades on the OG over the V3 is that basically the speed is faster. The speed both in notification time is quicker. Wyze claims it's about 3 times quicker. I don't know if I'm seeing exactly that. And then the time to actually view the live feed has been dropped down as well. So it's a little bit more responsive, but we'll see once we get into the actual testing that, the video quality might not be quite up to what the Cam V3 is. All right, so here we're gonna show the notification time on these cameras. We'll get a base with the Cam V3 so we can get an idea for what the notification time is on there. And then once we get that, we'll do the OG and the OG Telephoto. I'm going to turn my phone off. I'm just gonna wave my hand in front of the camera here and we'll see what pops up. All right, so there we got the notification. So that's the delay between motion on the Cam V3 and what it takes to pop up on here. All right, so with everything set up, let's move the camera and see how long it takes to actually pop up notification. And there we go, it popped up already. So that is much faster than the Cam V3. And lastly, we'll do the same with the OG Telephoto as well. Let's do some motion and see how long that takes to pop up on here. And it's already popping up, so very quick, much faster than the Cam V3. And one thing to note here, in my testing, I am using Wyze's Cam Plus subscription. Basically what that does is that enables a lot of the AI controlled detection for motion. Otherwise, with the camera, just plugged in and set up without that subscription, if you have an SD card in there, the camera will record 24/7, and then you can also go back and, view that playback. But as far as actually recording motion and uploading anything like that to the cloud, to unlock the larger recording and a shorter cooldown, you do need that Wyze subscription. So Wyze Cam Plus is $2 per camera per month. So depending on how many cameras you have, that can start to add up. But then if you get to a certain amount, they also have an unlimited subscription plan, which I think is $12 a month for unlimited devices. So depending on how many cameras you have watching over your property, that's something that you can decide which will be the best value for you. But for me and how I use these and how I have them positioned, like the V3 kind of overlooks it can see a little bit of the road and see cars coming down the road. I have trees that like to sway in the wind. So, even with detection areas set up on the camera, I was getting a lot of excessive motion notifications. So having the AI-powered motion control where it can detect, a person moving around, which has been really good in my experience in the past, that's kind of vital for me when I am using these cameras. And we've got all the cameras here. This is the Cam Pan V3. So one cool thing about these, this is the OG on the bottom and the OG telephoto on top, and Wyze, sells a stacking kit, which basically gives you a shorter mount here if you want to put a camera on top, one of the OGs on top of one of the other OGs, and then it slides in there. So one cool thing about this, with the 3x telephoto, like I can look over my front yard with the OG, and then I have the OG telephoto positioned perfectly to zoom into my front door. So that's one nice thing about the stacking kit on here. But otherwise, they come with a taller stand. And so it kind of looks like that out of the box, which is actually a big difference than the Cam V3. The Cam V3 has a different stand on here. And so it can actually collapse down and be a little bit smaller overall. It can have a smaller footprint, whereas the Cam OG with the mount on there will always be taller. So I'd say it's a simpler mount, it doesn't have all the like different rotations and, kind of like the Pixar lamp feet on here, where it's, turning and kind of expanding to go up and down. But the OG is just a little bit more, I don't know, universal. This kind of seems like a simpler, but also a little bit more effective mount on here. And it does come with wall mounting hardware as well, if you want to actually mount the camera to a wall or to a ceiling or something like that, and you can flip the video feed if you want to do that. If you've used any of Wyze's cameras in the past, the design is very familiar. It's very similar. So basically on the bottom, you have your mounting point where you can put the mount on there. You have a setup button, which will be used in the setup process, which is very easy through Wyze's app. Actually, on the Cam OG and OG telephoto, it's even easier. On the V3 and even the Cam Pan V3, you still have to like scan a QR code through your app, but that's not required with the OG and OG telephoto. So setup is a little bit easier on here. Also on the bottom, we have a slot for a micro SD card. This is probably my favorite way to use these cameras. Otherwise, you can just upload everything to the cloud if you have the Wyze Cam Plus subscription. For me personally, I like to record it on the SD card, and then you can still go back and view all that playback. So you have to either provide your own SD card or you can get one from Wyze. We're always featuring good deals on SD cards on 9to5toys.com, so be sure to check that out before you actually buy anything. Otherwise, on the front of the camera, you'll see that the design is just a little bit different, even though the overall footprint is nearly identical to the Cam V3. But one big change here is that it has a spotlight built in up top. I believe it's a 40 lumen spotlight, so nothing crazy bright, but that will make a difference at night. And especially if it's mounted on your porch at your front door, someone's approaching it and they see this light turn on, that might be a deterrence if you're trying to keep somebody off your porch at night. And then we have, kind of mentioned, it's kind of like a hot shoe-like mount up here on the top, and that would be where that stacking kit would slide into. And then on the back, we do have the cable, and it is still micro USB. These are very affordable cameras, so I'm sure Wyze is trying to save as much money as they can when they are producing these. And a quick look at the OG telephoto. It's basically identical to the OG, except that there's no spotlight on the front here, and you can see the lens just looks a little bit different because it is that 3x zoom on here. So otherwise, nearly identical, still has a setup button, SD card slot, and the little pigtail for the power connector back there. And all of these cameras do have an IP65 rating, so even though they are wired, you have to run power to them, they can be used indoor or outdoor, and you don't have to worry about the weather for that. So that's a great use for these things. Of course, Wyze does have battery-powered cameras as well, if you were, you don't want to run power outside or something like that. But if you are not worried about that, then these are a great camera to use pretty much anywhere around your house or in your house. Another thing to note here is that these cameras do have an alarm, and here we will turn that on. They call it their siren. So you get an idea for how that sounds. I think it's like a 90 decibel siren, something like that. So once again, with the OG and the OG telephoto, especially the OG with that spotlight and the siren, that is a way to deter people from around your front door if you want. So it's something to keep in mind there as a feature if you want that for your house. And moving on to video specs, it's using a CMOS, what do you call it there, Starlight sensor to deliver 1920 by 1080 resolution. And the field of view is 121.4 degrees, which is slightly smaller than that of the Cam V3 at 130 degrees. So this has the same resolution as the Cam V3, but the image is a little bit different. During the day, the OG has less contrast, which helps to bring out more details in the shadows. The detail seems to be very similar though, at least when comparing recorded footage on my iPhone 11. Both seem to have significant sharpening applied, which is not surprising. I kept going back and forth thinking that one was slightly sharper than the other, but in the end, I really do think that they are both very similar. Like the Cam V3, all of these cameras do have Wyze's color night vision mode, although it doesn't perform the same on the new OGs as it does on the V3. In my experience, the OG didn't do nearly as well at night compared to the Cam V3. The V3 seemed to handle low light much better with its color image, while the OG can't get the same detail in dark environments. Likewise, the OG telephoto struggled at night when compared to the Cam V3. Granted, the front of my house is quite dark at night, there aren't really any streetlights, but under those same conditions, the image from the V3 was much clearer and much easier to view. As you'll see in this footage, the OG telephoto was basically completely dark looking at my doorstep, even though the Cam V3 could still see some detail there and see what was going on. So that's definitely one difference. Even though the OG and OG telephoto are maybe slightly faster, the image at night is definitely far superior on the Cam V3. Maybe that's why it's more expensive. So you kind of need to gauge what exactly you'll be using the camera for and what needs you have from that camera. And this is at night where there's, like I said, basically no light in my front yard. So the Cam V3 is very impressive. If you have some light on your property, I think that the Cam OG and OG telephoto will be okay then. But if it's very dark like my yard, the V3 is definitely the way to go. And lastly, I'll just mention again on the Cam OG, it is priced at $20 on Wyze's website, plus shipping, which I believe was like $5. On Amazon right now, it's usually going to be $30, but it's on sale for $26, I think, with 2-day shipping. So, depending on where you are and what you want to spend, you can either get that from Wyze or get that from Amazon. And quickly touching on the OG telephoto, design-wise, very similar to the OG. It is $10 more, so you'll see it for $30 on Wyze's website plus shipping. It does have that 3x zoom, which is basically intended for looking at your mailbox or something like that. If you have a specific area that you want to be able to see a little bit better, get a little bit more, detail, a little bit closer picture, that's where this is going to come in handy. And it really is a nice little combo with the Cam OG when you stack these up. One other cool feature from Wyze is that they've introduced a picture-in-picture mode. So if you're looking at one of the camera feeds, you can pop another one in from the side. Basically, you could have the zoomed-in view of the telephoto, like for me at my front door, and then in the corner also have the wider image of the OG, so I can see what's going on and get a little more detail at the exact same time. All right, and lastly here, we're going to talk about the Cam Pan V3, which if you've seen Wyze's other Cam Pans in the past, this looks completely different. It's a full redesign. Basically, what it looks like is they took a Cam V3 and mounted it on here with a couple of motors. So as you can see, it can tilt up and down 180 degrees, so straight up and even straight down. It can also rotate 360 degrees. Now it's not continuous, there will still be hard stops, but it can rotate 360 degrees. And being able to point down like that, it does have a privacy mode as well. So if you want to, turn off any video feed from the camera and, you don't even want it pointing at you in your room, you can just hit the privacy mode. It'll point straight down and the video feed will turn off in the app. And one thing I noticed right away with the Cam Pan V3 is how much quieter it is over the V2. The V2, it's not super loud, but it's definitely noticeable when it's moving around, both panning and tilting. In the V3, you can still hear a little bit more when you're panning compared to tilting, but it is much quieter. So that makes it more useful as like a baby monitor or a home monitor where you don't want to disturb anybody, but it can still pan around, it can scan the room, which you can set up, those things to do automatically, and you don't have to worry about disturbing anybody with that. So that was definitely one thing that I noticed right away. And the additional range of motion in this design is a nice feature. It's not very often that I would need to look straight up with the camera, but that just opens up the door for more possibilities with this camera because it can do more things. And as far as pointing down, eventually it will basically, you know, the body will interfere with it, but it can get to like 45 degrees before the body starts to show up on the camera and interfere. So there's still a pretty good range of motion in there. As far as the video quality from the Campan V3, basically it looks as good as the Cam V3 in my opinion. So video quality during the day is pretty much identical, and at night it also seems to be identical to the V3, which is an improvement over the OG and the OG Telephoto in my opinion. So all in all, these three new cameras really are a nice improvement and addition to Wyze's lineup. You know, for $20, the OG, if you just need something that's basic, you know, you're not trying to record any sort of video at night when there aren't any lights on or anything like that, the Cam OG does great for what it is. And it does have infrared lights as well. The way I have it set up here, I have it shooting through a window, so if you turn on the IR lights, it bounces off the window and basically the video is unviewable. So for me, that doesn't work. But for you, if you have this just mounted outside, that would still be fine. And it does have those lights. It will work at night. But once again, the color night vision mode is much superior on the Cam V3 and even the Campan V3. The Cam OG Telephoto, I mean, that's a great addition to the lineup as well. It might be a more specific use, you know, it might not be necessary for everybody, but if you do have something like a front door that's a little bit further away or your mailbox that you want to keep an eye on, then this, you know, is the perfect addition for that. And lastly, the Campan V3 is a great upgrade over the V2. It's quieter, more adjustable with more range of motion, and the video image is great. Color night vision mode is great on here. So really good upgrade there. So in the grand scheme of things, Wyze remains a good budget option if you are looking for, you know, a very affordable way to have some sort of surveillance around your property. These do remain a good option. One caveat there, you know, Wyze has had a history of some security issues. I'll link down in the description to, I think one of the latest ones that we covered over on 9to5Mac. So you can check that out. So user be a little bit wary on there. I know some people have completely sworn off Wyze because of these. Me personally, I still use their cameras around my property just to keep an eye on the front door and different things like that. I have a couple set up in my garage so I can see people, you know, leaving and coming in and everything. I still use them quite a bit, but that's, you know, something you need to be aware of. All right, well, that's gonna do it for this review of the Wyze Cam OG, the OG Telephoto, and the Campan V3. Let us know what you think about them down in the comments below. If you're looking for some other videos to watch, I'll link to another Wyze review over here, as well as our most recent video. And thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up so others can find it easier, and consider subscribing. This is Jordan with 9to5 Toys.